Joining us again on Sports Talk ATL, Fox 5's Kelly Price. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us again.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
So we have opening day starting tomorrow. We just talked about three storylines kind of it going into opening day. What's one that you're most excited about just as far as this series is concerned?
Well, I mean, it's got to be the fact that they're opening up against the Phillies. What more poetic kind of justice could you have to the season than maybe sweeping them or at least winning that series to open this campaign? I mean, it's obviously been a tough ending to the year for the Braves the last couple of years, as well as Philly being the ones to hand those losses at the end of the year. So I think it's super exciting that they get to open up with such a big series. Hopefully the weather can cooperate. I know there's kind of some bad forecasts out there, but all the excitement that goes into it, I mean, you really can't script it any better.
No, I mean, Citizens Bank is going to be absolutely rocking. They love to say it's the best environment in baseball, though I'd argue Truist is definitely up there. It's going to feel like a postseason environment, even though it's opening day. You got Spencer Strider, Zach Wheeler, best on best. Spencer Strider hates those guys. They hate Spencer Strider. Snit adds a little bit more fuel to the fire with his comments about the raucous Philly fans and how disrespectful they were to his wife and kids. I mean, you really couldn't script it. Like you said, a more poetic opening day. Very often this happens in the NFL where they just nail the opening, week one game. It doesn't feel like this happens too often for the MLB where we get something that everybody is excited about. This is the number one rivalry in this sport today. Maybe, up there in any sport.
Yeah, well, I think there's also not as many of these kinds of situations in the MLB right now. There's not a lot of, rivalries to your point in series that kind of transcend the actual games themselves, whereas this has really become such a heated rivalry. Every game really matters, not just in the division race, but like you said, the fans get super into it. And I didn't go last year to the playoff series, but I went the years before to Citizens Bank, and that is one of the loudest places I have ever been. And I've covered a lot of huge sporting events, and that I've covered the World Series, and that was seriously one of the craziest environments I've ever been a part of. I will say though, everyone was very nice to me, but obviously I wasn't wearing a Braves jersey.
Yeah. It's not everybody. I think it's the bad apples in every crowd.
Right.
And once one person starts doing it, taking it a little far, everyone feels like it's appropriate, and then it just turns into this mob mentality. But I agree. I've always wanted to go up there. Now I just want to go up there to see if I survive because I can be boisterous myself. I got no problem voicing my opinions, especially if my team is winning. Now, the way the last two series have gone, I might have been pretty quiet, but hopefully this year is different. Now, Ronald Acuña just wrote something for the Players Tribune, kind of giving him an insight to like his backstory, his life growing up in Venezuela, how he got into baseball, and what he wants so much for the Braves, and talking about winning a World Series. And I think I want to ask what what stood out the most to you. But the thing that stood out the most to me as a Braves fan was the fact that he wants to win a World Series, catch the final out, and he wants the fans to rush the field. Like it is, because they do that in Venezuela. Like I know we've seen highlights where like he wins the home run derby and all the fans just rush the field. I mean, it doesn't sound like that could possibly happen in a pro sporting event. But if Ronald Acuña, the face of MLB, says, "Hey, get on the field," who's to tell them no? I'm getting on the field.
Yeah, and I mean, last year that guy that ran on the field and like took a selfie with him, he was all Ronnie was all about it. He's like, "Hey man, yeah, come over here." But yeah, that was cool. That line about him kind of visualizing that was really cool. But also everything leading up to that point of the Players Tribune article was why he feels that way. Right, like going back to his ACL tear and his rehab, and he really opened up about his kind of battle with depression during that time, how hard that was on him. He actually went to therapy and he talked about that, which was something I actually did not know about. But it's good to see that out in the open, right? And not even that, but even further back, going even further back in his story, he talked about growing up in Venezuela in his small town that, he was like, I would have rather never been born anywhere else. I absolutely loved my childhood and my upbringing, and stories about his mom selling lotto tickets and him making baseballs out of tape and newspapers because that's all they had to make baseballs out of. All that stuff was stuff that we don't always get to hear from Ronnie because he doesn't feel super confident in his speaking English. And he even talked about that in the article as well, which I've experienced firsthand with him. He is much shyer than you think, which is funny because he's such a big personality on the field. He seems like he's this big, confident, loud guy all the time with a huge personality. He's actually quite shy, especially when it comes to speaking English, even though he's actually very good at it. I think he just doesn't have the confidence to do it public facing that much, at least in my experience with him. And it was cool to see more of his story through his own words in this Players Tribune article. I think all Braves fans really need to check it out, and just baseball fans, sports fans. It's just a great story.
Yeah, it goes without saying. If you haven't read it, it's long, but it's very worth it. Had me tearing up at 6:30 in the morning this morning. I mean, it's absolutely, like you said, it had a little bit of touching, a little bit of funny, a little bit of magic. Gives you goosebumps, gives you tears. That's the entire, that's what's a great story. It gives you that full range of emotions. And his first big, long written word is encapsulated all of it. I think what stuck out to me the most, other than the things you guys said, you guys stole the best ones, was I think the World Series run. I think, you touched on it a little bit. He battled depression because of the knee injury. This is probably the first time in his life he hasn't been able to do everything. He's a superhuman athlete. And for the first time in his life, he really wasn't able to do everything that he wanted to do. And I think, what he said is he stopped watching baseball, particularly he stopped watching the Braves, picked it back up during the postseason run. And I think, I've touched on it a lot this offseason that this team is very hungry, not only because of the expectations, but a lot of that team from 21 is no longer here. You've got Matt Olson replaced Freddie Freeman, Mike Harris, Spencer Strider. Now you got Chris Sale in the mix. A lot of the bullpen is new. But Ronald Acuña Jr. was not a part of that team. Obviously, he kept the team afloat. For the first half of the season, he's about the only reason that team flirted with a 500 record. I mean, he really was carrying that baseball team. But in his eyes, he didn't contribute to that World Series run. And it just goes to show how important this game is to him and how hungry he truly still is. I thought that was such a special part of that entire piece where he's just saying, guys, I won a World Series. I want to feel like I earned a World Series win. And it just goes to show the best player on the best team is as hungry as ever.
You love to see it, right? As a Braves fan.
Yeah, no, the whole thing was special, but like we said, go check it out on the Players Tribune. It kind of gives you Jock vibes. Remember when he was on the Players Tribune? Obviously, that was before the playoff run, but maybe we can repeat the success following what happened with Jock Peterson in 2021. Switching gears here. Kelly, I saw a mock draft, and we kind of talked about this last time you were on, but we talked about Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze being the receiver that's on. Now, this mock draft was from ESPN, Michael Tannenbaum, a former NFL GM. He had 4 quarterbacks going in the top 4. He had Marvin Harrison falling right in the Falcons' lap with the 8th overall pick, and we still pass over him in favor of Dallas Turner. Now, I don't know. I don't know about that one. I know the receiver position is not that big, but Marvin Harrison, who a lot of people think is the best player in the entire draft, falling to you right at 8 and you pass over him in front of Dallas Turner, that seems hard to imagine.
It's hard for me to imagine because of the factors you just said, but also because what Terry Fontenot has shown us is his philosophy the whole time he's been here. He's always taken the best player available in their minds at whatever spot they were picking at. Look back to Bijan Robinson last year, obviously, and we talked about this last week as well. That was not a need for them, but they thought he was the best guy available at that slot, and that's why they made it happen. That for me is the more unbelievable part because we just haven't seen Terry Fontenot reach for positions of need like edge rusher or whatever else throughout the last couple of years. So that to me is the part that doesn't connect. But that guy's paid a lot more money than me to mock draft.
That doesn't mean he knows more than you, Kelly. That does not mean he knows more than you, Kelly.
Hey, you said it. You said it.
No, I'll go to bat for you. I do not think Tannenbaum, all these guys, though, Mel Kiper, Matt Miller, all the guys at the big networks. And listen, Dallas Turner may be, the top player rated when the Falcons are on the clock. I'm not debating that, but let's just have a different conversation that he isn't. He's not going to be the pick. I don't know what Terry Fontenot has to do. Make Kyle Pitts the highest drafted tight end in league history. Draft Bijan Robinson after Tyler Algier just broke the franchise record and passed on Jalen Carter, a interior defender who would have filled the need. I don't know what more he has to do to show these, mock drafters that he is going to take the best player available. And if we're talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. falling to the Falcons, there will be no ifs, ands, or buts. Marvin Harrison will be in Atlanta. And it's also not like if we're making this argument about, premium positions. I mean, running back isn't a premium position. Wide receiver is a premium position in today's NFL. When you get a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., who everybody thinks is a generational prospect, and you pass over him, and, in terms of, you could make the argument Jalen Carter had the red flags off the field, not to get too much into that. You could make that argument, and that's why Bijan Robinson, who's just this sterling resume, great guy, Marvin Harrison is, has shipped in a clean bill of health in terms of off the field. So the Tannenbaum thing is, put Kelly Price on the TV instead of Tannenbaum, because I can't stand that.
You make a great point too about the character side of things, and I won't go into the Jalen Carter stuff, but we hear Terry Fontenot talk so much about this buzzword he always uses, ethos, and it's something that he really wants to make sure that the guys in this locker room they're good fits with each other. The whole thing that they're trying to do with the culture here, and I know Arthur Smith isn't here anymore, he's a part of building a lot of that, but that's still Terry Fontenot's MO. He's not going to bring in a guy that he knows is going to be disruptive in that way. And I think you make a great point about that, because you've seen the guys that they have brought in are guys that are great character fits and just are great locker room guys. So I think that's another part of the equation that a lot of people don't always take into account.
Yeah. All right, Kelly, thank you so much for joining us again. As always, you are fantastic.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Have fun.